So my talk today is called The Roots and Routes of Hope with Action, Geographies of Transformative Research. And as I said, I'm really excited to be here with you all today. You might recognize some of the people in these pictures who are professors at the University of Florida, and also who are still my colleagues today. And the reason why I show you this picture is because when I was writing this talk, I was imagining myself being in that seminar room in the Latin American Studies building, and all of the important things that I learned with my professors and in the Tropilunches. I had many transformational experiences learning from the different speakers who came in, as well as from some of the people who you see here who are in professors and in different sorts of political charges all over Latin America. And I'm really grateful for the experience that I had at University of Florida, and it feels like coming back full circle to be able to be a speaker at Tropilunch. Although I do remember giving a Tropilunch, I guess in 2003, about preliminary findings from my master's research. But I wanted to say that the most important lesson that I've learned over the last 20 years since beginning graduate school at University of Florida is that there's many different paths to walk that are all equally valid, both within academia and outside of academia. And the path that I've chosen to walk is to bridge the academic research with action on the ground through the creation of this organization, Roots and Routes. So by the time I came to the University of Florida in 2002, I had already lived with the Chachi people for about a total of a year. I had done 2 internships in Ecuador, at the border of the Ecuadorian-Colombian border. And I had worked on ethnobotanical gardens with the Chachi communities of La Ceiba. It was called La Ceiba, and the other was called Loma Linda. Loma Linda was 5 miles by motorized canoe from the nearest road. And La Ceiba had, just when I was arriving, they had traded 1,200 hectares of forest for getting a road put directly into their community so that they had more market access. So I came into University of Florida with these experiences, and I was already very dedicated to working in rainforests and learning from indigenous people. So I came into the University of Florida thinking I was only going to do a master's degree with these 3 principal purposes in mind, which was to create programs and projects that would benefit economic benefits, that would bring economic benefits to the Choco communities, to find ways that the indigenous Afro-descendant other place-based communities could teach others, and to create north-south connections. I had learned so much from the Chachi people in the times that I was doing internships, but I had seen also that they were cutting down, they were in a position where they were needing to cut down their forest, to cut down trees, to be able to buy simple things like school supplies, pay for hospital visits, and food. So I really, on one hand, I saw that they were living in a very stark set of circumstances, and then on another on the other, I saw how much they had to teach. So I wondered, was there a way to create a organization, or I don't even think I had an organization in mind, but was there a way to somehow address their economic needs while also building from their strengths? So these were the ideas I already had in mind when I came into the University of Florida. And I wanted to share a story about, I don't know if you all know or have heard of the work of Dr. Wood, who was my advisor, and Dr. Charles Wood, who did the majority of his research in Brazil. And I remember him always telling me when I was a graduate student that my research question would change. You know, as a graduate student, you're always trying to figure out what is my main research question, and you're chiseling it down. It takes pretty much the whole 2 years, it feels like. And so he said that it would change. He talked about how we can try to perfect our question as much as we can by reading the literature, but it's going to look a lot different when we walk down that road. That as we walk down that road, a whole nother set of questions will emerge. That's just one of the valuable things that he taught me, and that definitely happened to me. But what took a lot longer for it to happen was that it's not just my research question would transform, but by walking down that road so many times that my research itself would transform, the research would transform my life's path, and that those experiences would transform me as a person. This is that road that I was talking about that they were building. They are literally cutting down the trees along the new opening to lay down the trees and then put the gravel on top as I was arriving. So my research was based in is based in the Choco Bio Region. It's now been 25 years this summer. And the Choco Bio Region is right here. If you can see that it's part of the Choco hotspot that comes down through Panama, at the, you know, through the Darien and Panama, all the entire coast of Colombia and into the northern forests of Esmeraldas of Ecuador, the Esmeraldas province. And the Choco bioregion is one of the most diverse places on Earth, and also one of the most endangered and dangerous places in the, well, it's one of the most dangerous places in the Americas, and it's one of the most endangered rainforests on Earth. And I can't tell the whole story of what transpired, obviously, in the last 25 years with the rainforest and the peoples, but I'm hoping that this set of maps that's now older can speak 1,000 words. You can see that when I arrived in 1997, so this little pink area in 1997 didn't even exist, but it's the first palm oil plantation. And then you can see in 2007, all of this rainforest that was primarily primary forest was transformed into oil palm plantations. You know what? I'm so sorry, but I have to let my cat out. I'll be right back. Sorry, the joys of Zoom. So, yeah, there was all this, when I got there, the Choco rainforest in the Esmeraldas province was mostly intact and the rivers were sparkling. And it was a phenomenally beautiful rainforest. It was, I was flabbergasted to find out that there was a rainforest on the other side of the Andes, because upon going to Ecuador, I only had heard of the Amazon. And so I quickly was fascinated by this place that, was incredibly diverse, but also was populated by Afro-descendant people and indigenous peoples. And that they had lived in this part of Ecuador and in Colombia together for about 400 years. And so a lot of their cultures were intermixed, but still they lived in their separate ways of life and ways of doing things. But even though the rainforest was being felled all around them for these oil palm plantations, I was really moved by the ways that the people, when I would come visit them, would still be able to be so hopeful and filled with laughter and, always be thinking of how they could make the best of that day. And so I really started to question what is hope, and like how are people in the communities able to sustain what I began to think of as geographies of hope. And that was a term that, I'm a geographer, and that was a term that was being used, just beginning to be used in geography at the time where I started thinking about hope. In 2007, I think the first publications about geographies of hope came out. So you can see here that Alberto Acosta, who's an economist and also was the presidential candidate, he said the African palm is not hope for Ecuador. We are destroying the forest. We are destroying nature, the base of life itself. The African palm is not a future path. It is one of the paths that has not resolved problems, and even less in Esmeraldas. We are losing the last tropical forest in the Ecuadorian coast. So it was with this kind of hope that was in tension with despair that I really plunged into my research questions. And my findings, the way that I organized my findings were into a discussion about intra-island and inter-island geographies of hope. The inter-island geographies of hope are defined as communities' ability to maintain sustainable cultural practices and enhance agricultural diversity in their territories, thus cultivating systems of food sovereignty and intricate ways of knowing and being. And you can see that I documented and talked to the communities and experienced the community's cultural practices that were based in a very specific way of relating to the rainforest, because it's so humid in the Choco that they have a shifting agriculture that's called slash and mulch, that's obviously distinct from slash and burn, because they leave it to compost. They leave the forest that's felled in their new planting agricultural areas to compost. And then also their ways of being and knowing their ontologies and epistemologies of live and let live, the general resilience and perseverance, and what their approach to life, I don't think, was about growth or even about degrowth, but instead sustainable relationality. So, and then inter-island geographies of hope are defined as the interethnic networks. I argue that by casting social nets within and between their ethnic territories, communities defend their rights to territorial self-determination, to identity, and rights-based sustainable development, to clean water, to food sovereignty, and ultimately to living well. But upon completion of my PhD, I found and felt that the research that I was doing wasn't enough, because the oil palm plantations were not just expanding because of, well, okay, so the oil palm plantations, the government said that the Ecuadorian government said that the reason initially why they wanted to expand the oil palm plantations is for biofuels production. In 2020, they also approved a new law that re-emphasized again the importance of palm oil for biofuel production, and thus the oil palm plantations and their continued expansion. So when I went into my PhD research, I was researching the contradictions between international climate change mitigation policy and then what was actually happening on the ground. So the idea was kind of to show the ironies of, global north and international ideas about biofuel, about oil palm plantations contributing to climate change mitigation. But what I actually found, and this is something I didn't mention before, is that the oil palm plantations were tied to illegal armed groups taking territory, to money laundering, to guns trafficking, to also to drug trafficking. And that's still the case today. So Esmeralda's this beautiful place where the people were living generally in peace before the turn of the millennium, now is kind of this no-go zone. It's not even kind of, it is a no-go zone. It's a red zone. People, the United States says that, will not allow people to go to Esmeraldas. It's a red zone, and it has basically been increasingly isolated. So basically they were in a very urgent, the communities that I worked with were in a very urgent situation. And they were in a position where there was all this very terrible things happening, like the contamination of their water, plants dying because of Plan Colombia fumigations, all their agricultural crops dying, and all sorts of violence that they were experiencing on a day-to-day level, because the oil palm plantations were associated with illegal armed groups and often had the I'm forgetting the word right now, but it had people that were paid, hitmen and bands of violent people to intimidate the people to sell their lands. So again, I'm showing you this slide because I came back when I graduated from the University of Kentucky with my PhD. And my dissertation was in hand. I had a publication or two, but I didn't feel like publishing about the situation was going to be enough. So then I came back to my initial reasons for going to graduate school, and which you can see right here and that I already talked about. So I had hoped to be able to have time to show you this film. Let's see, but we only have about, what do we have, about a half hour left. Is that right, AJ?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so it is a toss-up. I think that I'm just gonna I think I am going to play this film and cut other parts due to the technological difficulties in the beginning. So I think it's very important that the people speak for themselves about what was going on in the Choco. So I hope that this works.
Yo he sido desde muy tierna edad, he sido de trabajar al campo. Y hasta ahora que esta edad tengo.
En el tiempo de mi infancia había muchas cosas del campo. Muchos animales silvestres, tanto avícolas como terrestres. Y también peces del río. En el agua había mucho que comer. Pero a través del tiempo, resulta que apareció una dicha fumigación por Colombia. Y esa fumigación ha terminado con todos los animales del campo.
Ahorita se escaseó, cosa que no hubo nada. Caña, yucas, de todo se quedaron como colorados las cocos, todo se cayeron textos, de todo. Totalmente ya casi no había nada.
Hemos sentido un malestar bien fuerte para nosotros. Como nosotros como Oaxaca estamos sufriendo, ahí muriendo de hambre encima de casa.
Nosotros salimos desplazados. Este es mucho más ancho. ¿Qué son los planos? Lentes de todo tipo.
Lo duro es que no tenemos agua, maestro. No tenemos quien los ayude para sobrevivir. Y ya tengo, por ejemplo, 30 años, 40 años estaba viviendo en esta comunidad desde que yo era niño.
El agua no lo sirve para nada, porque el agua sigue contaminada.
Siquiera que tuviéramos las aguas en los ríos, buenas, sanas, como éramos antes, que había de todo.
Pero ahora uno vive todito contaminado, que todo el estómago le duele.
No hay agua, no hay alimentación en los campos, no hay escuelas en los campos. ¿Qué vida vamos a hacer los pobres?
Si quisiera que me decían, vamos del presidente, y lo primero que le decía al presidente, nosotros queremos nuestra agua, y por culpa de ustedes, por darle permiso a las palmeras, es que la gente se está muriendo. Yo quisiera que ustedes fueran a beber esa agua. Eso no es justo de lo que están haciendo el gobierno con nosotros.
Ellos nos han traído problemas porque han destruido muchas hectáreas de bosque. Se han extinguido muchas especies de animales que ya no lo hay. Pero hay que luchar mucho porque hay muchos problemas aquí, que nosotros como pueblos ancestrales de esta zona, que es nuestro territorio, que lo amamos, que lo queremos mucho y que luchamos por defenderlo, por defender la naturaleza, porque es importante defender la naturaleza.
Y ahí, este es un plano medio.
Los pobres estamos jodidos.
So this documentary is a project that I've been working on as an organization, as Roots and Routes, for the last 5 years. And we are working obviously together with the communities of La Chiquita and Guadualito. La Chiquita is the Afro-descendant community and Guadualito is the Awa community. And the film director is named Heriberto Wallinga. He's the first film director and maker from the Amazon rainforest. He's from the community of Sarayaku. And we've been working together with another filmmaker named Pocho Alvarez on this project. Pocho and Heriberto are the professors of, well, Heriberto was a professor of the in-person film school, and Pocho is the professor of the online film school during these COVID times. And the idea is to teach the youth to use the camera as a way to defend their territory and to access clean water, because the communities have the first rights of nature case in the world, even though even that has been really invisibilized within Ecuador in the world, because I guess just because the place is so dangerous that sometimes people don't want to get involved. But at this very moment, Roots and Routes is accompanying the communities in already a 20-year process, but then in the last couple years where they're entering a parallel rights of nature process with the mechanism of rights of nature. So that's what this film is about. And we just got some final funding and it should be out this year. Oops, so. But that experience of creating the film led us to, when I say us, it's community leaders in San Lorenzo, community leaders in the Andes of Ecuador, and other indigenous scholar activists and a couple other people accompanying us as the board to establish Roots and Routes intercultural collaborations. And you can see here that our mission is to facilitate sharing knowledge and compassion between diverse cultures en route to responsibly stewarding a flourishing living world. Our vision is people united arm in arm to form an Indigenous-led and youth-inspired educational exchange network that teaches the world that we are worth more than the resources below our feet. I'm definitely not showing you this film, but I did want you to see that part of what we're doing along the way as we are creating Roots and Routes is documenting our learning processes. I actually see Wendy Lynn on this call, and I remember you back at University of Florida 20 years ago teaching me the term social learning. And it's the idea where you reflect back on your process as you move forward in research or other kinds of projects. And I definitely say that Roots and Routes is social learning at its best, I think. And we this little mini film was also created by Heriberto Walinga, who accompanied us at our first board meeting in Ecuador in August 2019. And if you get a chance, you can go to rootsandroutes.org and learn more about what all our board members' first reaction to creating this organization is and what we're becoming in their own words. So what are we becoming? We're becoming what is called a pluriversity. Some of you might have heard of the concept, but the idea is that a pluriversity is an online teaching platform and in-person exchange network. It interconnects many ways of knowing to better care for one another in all life on Earth. The Roots and Routes pluriversity connects to already existing pluriversities in Indigenous ancestral-led projects to celebrate important ancestral cultural sciences that do not need reinterpretation into Western frameworks to be valid because they already are. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. So Roots and Routes pluriversity is organized into 4 branches or approaches. Indigenous and ancestral land-based leaders, community organizers, scholar activists, and all considered carriers and producers of are all considered carriers of producers of expert knowledge. And we teach a 4-directional approach, which is made up of restoring, revindicating, and reciprocating. So I'm going to conclude this talk by telling you the slightest bit about each of those branches, and then talking about the Youth Visionary Collective. So restoring what is a approach that addresses what it means to be human in our communal relations. It is our community-led education and media focus. Examples of projects are the audiovisual workshops with the Heriberto Walinga, who's the film director from the Amazon, from Sarayaku and Pocho, as well as youth learning how to use social media to restore history and the ways that we relate to one another, and other writing and in-community workshops. Restoring is the goal of the restoring approach is to establish a sense of well-being and balance within the watersheds we call home. it is what we are working on doing is restoring living territories and economies by supporting self-determination of the ancestral indigenous communities. It's made up of projects that strengthen place-based cosmologies or ways of understanding people's relationships to their environments and their origin stories. And also, an example of this is, you can learn about it more on our website, is where we are restoring an actual building in the Andes of Ecuador together with a community. It's a very important historical building that it was a hacienda house where the parents of the people who you see in this picture were indentured servants, and in 1959 they got their land back and began planting their plants and relearning who they are as people. And in 1992 they took back their the last parcel of land, which was this hacienda house, and they wanted to convert it into a intercultural learning center where they teach their own youth and children about their culture, but also teach people the world over about their struggles and where people can come and share similar ones. So that's kind of one of our more important restoring projects, but we also hope just to be able to support the different communities' initiatives for sustainable ways of moving forward and taking care of their living territories and economies. And the reivindicating, I'd say that we talked a lot about that, or I've talked a lot about that so far. It's about the right, it really, in this moment in time, the reivindicating program focuses on the rights of nature case and accompanying those communities, but we want to have the focus of the pluriversity focus, zoom in on the human and nature's rights through law and self-determination. So it's our program that will educate communities about their rights, but also educate the public about the kinds of struggles that the communities are going through. And then the reciprocating is a educational program where communities on the ground will be able to learn from each other. The pictures that you're seeing here are the Awa indigenous community from the Choco coming up to the Karanki indigenous community of the Andes to learn about the Karanki's community-led tourism, and also to exchange foods and stories and to get to know one another. Ironically, the Karanki people and the Awa people are all pre-Incan people who spoke, who were part of the same language family before the Andean peoples started speaking Quechua. But before, they all spoke from the same language family. So it's very interesting that they're able to, and awesome that they're able to come together and learn about their diverse cultures. And the Awa people have received a huge amount of support from the Karanki people in their struggles against the oil palm plantations and for clean water and just visibility in general. So that's the video that we created about that experience. And to conclude, I want to share with you about the Youth Visionary Collective. The Youth Visionary Collective came in just in time to Roots and Routes. And basically what happened is that some of my ex-students wanted to get involved in Roots and Routes. We started off with 9 youth who were helping me to build the organization. And then they, as every 10-week season went on, they began to realize that they were a community of their own, that we don't need to just focus, that Roots and Routes doesn't need to only focus on the communities and pluriversities that we partner with, but also the processes of building the organization is a community in themselves. And that program is called the Youth Visionary Collective. And they're divided into 6 teams. We have up to 30 for the last year. Well, it started 2 years ago, but for the last year, we have up to 30 youth for every 10-week season. They're divided into these 6 teams, and they are helping to build a organization and the pluriversity that will be geared towards what their primary interests and passions are. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Apologies for the technical difficulties in the beginning. I do want to say that this path that I've chosen of creating a nonprofit and trying to bridge research and community-based worlds, it's not a panacea. It's not, you know, I don't think that it is better than the academic path I could have chosen, but it's the path that I chose. And I really hope that I can continue to work with professors at the University of Florida in tropical conservation development, as well as grad students, and that we can continue to build community that will work towards doing what TCD does best, which is taking care of the earth and learning how we can also alleviate difficult conditions for forest communities and other sorts of communities that live in diverse ecosystems across the tropics. So thank you so much.